Hello there, guys. At the risk of sounding like every other YouTuber out there, I'd really appreciate it if you'd click the subscribe button. It's free, it doesn't cost you anything, and it allows my channel to grow, which means guests like the one you're about to watch, as well as more, would be willing to come on. Just give it a like, give it a subscribe, and we'll go from there. All right, thank you, and enjoy this episode. Thank you for your time today.
Thanks a lot for having me on and for the opportunity to speak to a totally different audience than the usual.
No, it's good. It's good. My thing is that I have no niche, and I followed your work pre-COVID, during COVID, your cancellation, absolutely abhorrent what happened. So I'd like to sort of touch upon that, get into that, what happened. But for my audience who don't know who you are, could you give us in a nutshell, who is Dr. Malone?
Well, that's more complicated than in a nutshell. Uh, I'm a physician and scientist. I was raised in the central coast of California, born in Palo Alto, California, in Northern California. I've lived all over the country and a little bit in Europe, in Switzerland in particular. Uh, let's see, the CV, Northwestern Medical School, UC Davis Biochemistry, Santa Barbara City College Computer Science, uh, Harvard Medical School for a fellowship in global clinical research, uh, pathology fellowship at UC Davis, taught pathology for many years in academia. Currently have moved up the ranks, and I'm currently an adjunct full professor at LSU in Louisiana. Uh, I sit on the advisory committee on immunization practices as the vice chair. So that's the CDC group that advises the director of the CDC on vaccine policy.
Hmm.
I serve as a medical advisor to MAHA Action. So that's a advocacy group aligned with the Make America Healthy Again movement
That's
and
RFK's work, isn't it?
Secretary Kennedy, exactly.
Yeah.
Uh, I've published over 100 papers. I have a lifetime win rate for clients of over $8 billion dollars in grants and contracts. I'm skilled in proposal development, project management, regulatory affairs, the full gamut of bench to licensure. I've spent plenty of time doing regulatory affairs work and FDA submissions and FDA meetings. So I'm a bit of an oddball in that I've worked for industry in many roles, including Solvay Biologics, which is a reasonably large or was a reasonably large pharma. I've worked for small pharma. I ran a consulting business for about 2 decades, specializing in smaller startup and early stage biotech companies, and particularly helping them work with the government. So there's a snapshot. I'm quite deep in biodefense and increasingly in public policy because I destroyed my consulting business through speaking out about COVID
Yeah.
and the jab in particular. I now make uh, all my revenue comes from my decentralized subscriber base on Substack. We have about 14,000 paid subscribers and a total of about 350,000 subscribers. Some people consider me, well, I'm an author. We've got two books, including Lies My Government Told Me and Cywar. And, um, I write daily essays, mostly focused on government corruption and policy, and some on uh, homesteading. I was originally a carpenter and a farmer,
Right.
particularly lemons and avocados, and have returned to my roots. This is our fifth small farm, and this one we homesteaded beginning about 8 years ago here in Madison, Virginia, starting with raw hayland. So there was no livable structures, no fences, no water, no septic, no power, no well. And we've booted it up now to a very nice property with indoor riding arena and two barns and three residences, et cetera, et cetera. So uh, There's a nutshell. I'm kind of a weirdo. I do a lot of different things.
Well, it seems to completely opposite. You've got your healthcare side and your homesteading side. That's about as far on the spectrum as you can get, I would think. Mind you, what
Yeah,
we eat is healthy as well, is
yep,
healing, isn't
it's
it?
oh, it's all aligned with Maha. And increasingly, I'm moving into, let's say, public policy and diplomacy.
Okay, so definitely branching out there. The one thing that you didn't mention is I would say that you were one of the architects of the mRNA
I was
technology.
actually the original inventor. That's a fact.
Okay.
I filed the original invention disclosures. I was part of the team that did the original reduction to practice about a decade before Carrico and Weissman began doing their work.
Okay, so that term excuse me, injection gets thrown around a lot when we talk about vaccines and COVID, especially. Um, Given what's happened and what's come out since, do you think the public's perception of vaccines has changed for the good or for the worse?
I would say it's become more realistic, but it's variable. It's not uniform. I'm reminded of the quote: "The future's already here; it's just unevenly distributed." The opinions about vaccines and the kind of dichotomy between those that have assimilated this promoted narrative that all vaccines are safe and effective, and those that are now questioning, I think realistically, whether or not vaccines are like any other drug. They have their strengths and their weaknesses, they have their effectiveness, and they have their safety issues.
Yeah.
And then there's those that uh, are full on, I hate vaccines and I hate anybody that has anything to do with vaccines. And of course, that means they hate me too. So I get hated on from both sides.
Damned if you do and damned if you don't sort of situation. So, with regards to mRNA research, what was it trying to solve at the time? Like, as in, long time before COVID.
So in the late 1980s, I was a overly ambitious, rather arrogant young man, about 28, uh, and trying to pursue an MD PhD degree. And in particular, I had come from a retrovirus biology laboratory at UC Davis working on breast cancer models. And I was really passionate about the idea that I might be able to use my expertise in retrovirus biology to build a career in gene therapy as a pediatric gene therapist. So that was my career goal. And being the ambitious young buck that I was, I worked hard and managed to worm my way into what arguably was the top gene therapy laboratory in the world at the time, that of Dr. Inder Verma at the Salk Institute. He generally does not take graduate students, and after me, I don't think he's ever had another one. And that was I was warned not to do that because of the nature of the laboratory and Dr. Verma by people that had experience with him in the past. And but I thought you know, young men and egos. So uh, so I went into that postdoc lab with about 18 postdoctoral fellows, and I was the only graduate student. And you have to carve out a niche, or you're just going to get swallowed. And so I was working on a rather obscure area in retrovirology that was important for the gene therapy business involving retroviruses, which is the nature of how the RNA gets assembled into a retrovirus and what are the specific genetic sequences for that. And so I wanted to use what's called reverse genetics uh, to answer that question. And in order to do that, I had to develop a method for, because retroviruses exist in both a DNA and an RNA form. That's why they're called retroviruses. They go from RNA to DNA, then they integrate into the genome.
Right.
So it's the RNA form that gets packaged. So I needed to be able to deliver RNA into what was called packaging cell lines that make the proteins necessary to assemble a retrovirus. And hopefully that would pop out infectious virus that would have the recombinant RNA that I put in the first place. So that was the goal and objective. And the problem was there were, of all the systems that have been developed for DNA delivery into cells, none of them worked for worth a tinker's damn for RNA. Furthermore, nobody had really solved the problems of how to make large amounts of pure RNA and what the structure of that RNA needed to be in order to get it turned into protein. And so I used a reporter gene called luciferase. It has nothing to do with the devil. It's the protein and the RNA coding for that protein that makes the protein luciferin that fireflies use and glowworms to make light.
Right.
To do
Okay.
with ATP, and so it's a very sensitive reporter gene. Has this is down in the weeds. It has 5 logs linearity, so very sensitive, very reproducible, and no one had really used it in this way before. So I adapted it for this purpose, for large scale testing of different delivery systems, and proceeded to try to solve the problem of how to get the RNA into the cells. And so the short answer, now that I've talked about all that, to your question is, what the heck, you're asking, what the heck were you doing with RNA? And the answer is, I was trying to figure out a way to ask a fundamental question about how RNA gets packaged into retroviruses. But in so doing, I had to solve a whole cluster of problems. And those problems opened the door to something I never anticipated, which is non-viral gene therapy using this molecule that nobody had ever thought about using before, which was RNA as opposed to DNA or viruses. And having the insight, that was the first patent disclosure I filed with the Salk. I think it was 1987, use of RNA as a drug. Having that insight, then the question was, well, what the heck is that going to be any good for? And I had prior experience in vaccine development and vaccinology. And so the aha moment was basically 3 things came together. Number one, you could use RNA as a drug and get small levels of temporary protein production. This is pre-pseudouridine and Carrico and Weissman. Okay? So natural RNA gets degraded very rapidly. So you could use RNA to produce low levels of protein. Gene therapy had a fundamental problem. The body doesn't know that it's the good gene. It only knows that it's a different gene, and so it mounts an immune response.
Right.
So I had as this is progressing, I had the oh shit moment when I realized that the thing that I wanted to do in my career was never going to work because of the immune response. And it still bedevils the entire gene therapy field, that problem. But the third aha was, oh, well, if the problem is immune response against the foreign protein that's produced by the RNA, well, let's make lemonade out of lemons. And we can use that to make vaccines that are more like those that are associated with a live attenuated virus, a natural infection, what we might call natural immunity. And so that right there, you just got it. That was the core invention around all of this. And then once that kind of got rolling, the knives were out. Everybody wanted a piece of it. They wanted a piece of me. The University of California, San Diego told me I couldn't talk to the Salk lawyers. The Salk lawyers told me I couldn't talk to the UC San Diego lawyers. My thesis advisor initially wanted nothing to do with it. And then suddenly, when it looked like it was commercial, he had to have his name on the patent. And I got caught in a heck of a lot of crossfire and ended up with a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder and a nervous breakdown.
Christ, so you put all that work in, and you ended up with a negative result yourself.
Big time. Some people used to accuse me of making, that I profited on this technology. The total compensation I got was after I left the Salk, I took my technology and my reagents to a little startup company called Vical, which is where they filed the patents and I did the disclosures on the vaccine aspects. even though I'd had the ideas back at the Salk. And Vical paid me a total of, as a technician, about $18,000 a year. And for the patent rights, I received one Susan B. Anthony dollar. So that's what I got for in total for the invention. And the patent that had been filed from the Salk with Inder as the co-inventor was unceremoniously dropped when Inder went and became a consultant to Vical.
That's mad. That's absolutely mad. So,
No, it's not. It's the way things are.
okay, it's the way things are. To me, it seems a bit mad. So, fast forward from there, you've got this technology. It's out there in the, shall we say, the scientific medical domain.
Yeah, and I started working on it as an academic beginning about 1990. And once I went back to UC Davis, wrote some grants, got $1 million for developing an AIDS vaccine using DNA. And the CEO of Vical wrote me a cease and desist letter saying that I could never use any of the technology that I had developed when I was at Vical. So I had to find workarounds and ended up producing a lot of new tech relating to delivery, including new catinucleotide compounds. So these are in the formulations, and began doing a lot of testing in animal models, including non-human primates, and discovered that this technology was incredibly toxic, highly inflammatory, and I dropped it and moved on to other methods and other discoveries like the use of pulsed electrical fields, further advances in direct injection, etc. So that's the story. There is my sense was that the tech had insurmountable obstacles, and fast forward to the present, in 2020 when Peter Cullis and Moderna and BioNTech were advancing this technology. Peter Cullis from the University of British Columbia, who's the one, by the way, that should have got the Nobel, if anybody would have, for this technology, for the particular advances that made these vaccines possible. It was really Peter Cullis and his group at University of British Columbia, not Carrico and Weissman, that should have got the Nobel. Their technology really is optional. You don't need it. It's not enabling. But Cullis and company were the ones that came up with the formulations that worked. And I called Peter. I'd known him for years. You know, the liposome world is small. In 2020, and asked him about the nature of the formulations and whether they'd solved the problems. And he claimed that they were non-inflammatory. They stayed at the site of injection. They didn't distribute all across the body. We know all those things now are false.
Mm-hmm.
But those are the reassurances that he gave me, asserting that he had solved these fundamental problems that had caused me to drop the tech.
Okay, so moving forward to the pandemic then, what were your main disagreements, shall we say, with the prevailing health consensus at the time?
You're asking me what were the main disagreements with it. So the thing that caused me to kind of come out of the closet, so to speak, was my disagreements about the bioethics of what were going on in terms of mandates, coercion, compulsion, and enticement that was going on with both adults and children. And that is just, I don't know how else to say it bluntly, it is fundamentally wrong. It is fundamentally unethical. It is contrary to the Nuremberg Accords, the Helsinki Agreement, the Belmont Report, the whole history of 20th century bioethics screams that this is wrong. And I could cite a text from the American Medical Association that explicitly says mandates are wrong. But for some reason, mandates are wrong unless they're vaccines. But that's an unwritten exception. And of course, it was the Canadians in particular that just were over the top with early on with a lot of their policies regarding enticement and compulsion, particularly of children. And it's been rumored that Justin Trudeau's family had stock in the company that Peter Cullis created out of University of British Columbia. That's unverified rumors at this point. But certainly the Canadian government, and then followed, the British government and really all of the NATO and Five Eyes nations went in deep.
Hmm.
And they did so without adequate testing. That's quite clear now in retrospect. The products were not safe. They were not, I got called a liar by the Washington Post a week, 4 years ago, last Friday, at the Stop the Mandates rally in Washington, D.C., for saying that the vaccines weren't working in that they were not preventing infection or spread of the virus, which is what they were licensed for, by the way. They
Yeah.
weren't licensed for reduction of disease, they were licensed for prevention. And so uh, that's been proven to be the case, that in fact I was right and the Washington Post was wrong, and so many others. And of course, the myocarditis that was detected very, very early by a small group at FDA, who then alerted the Israelis, who then confirmed it. And then, once the Israelis confirmed it, then the CDC belatedly accepted that that was the case and suppressed that information for a long period of time from the American public, and then eventually acknowledged that yes, myocarditis was a thing, but it was uh, mild and transient and recovered without any sequelae. We now know that was a lie. They continued to deny that these products cause any deaths, and yet now the federal government is acknowledging, and I'm part of that ACIP working group. I've seen the data. The government is acknowledging that these products do cause death, and as has the UK government, but the UK government has made a decision that they're not going to release those death data because it would be too controversial or cause backlash to the government, or I'm not sure. So in any case, they've decided that they're going to hide it from the British public. And there was documented also agreements by U.S. and U.K. Intelligence communities that any information that would cause, quote, vaccine hesitancy, in other words, true informed consent, uh, information was to be suppressed, which is why you ended up with this bizarre situation of the National Health Service denying the yellow card findings, even though they were in their face. Uh, it's this is just a horrible story, and it's really it's what led us to build this book, Cywar, Enforcing the New World Order, in which I talk about many things, Brit, including the 77th Brigade, Mutton Crew, your deployment of military grade psychological warfare technology against your own population. And that's now become normalized in the case of your government, of course, with their censorship operations, etc. I hope this isn't going to get you in trouble by talking about these things.
No, no, no. There's no limits. There's no censorship on my channel. Until YouTube says I can't do it, I'll keep going.
Okay.
It's funny actually. I worked in the National Health Service when COVID hit, for lack of a better term. And my colleagues were getting jabbed because we were told you get the jab or you lose your job. I'd worked in the health service at this point, what, 6, 7 years? And there was me and one other who worked on the same hospital ward, mental health hospital ward. And we both stood our ground. My ward manager took me aside one day and said, I've had my jab, Dean. He said, but I really respect that you want to make your own decision. I was like, well, I don't want it. He was like, if you don't take it, they're going to sack you. Just book it. And if they do a U-turn, then you haven't got to take it. I said, well, I'd rather leave and find another job than take it. But at this point, you sort of, in the back of my mind, I was like, everywhere is expecting people to be jabbed. I've got children, I've got a mortgage. Like, that panic set in, but I still stood my ground on it.
Yeah, that was
And
quite old. So I did take the product. I took Moderna. It was what was delivered into my region by the National Guard. And I had long COVID from having been infected with the first wave in Boston. And so I had Wuhan 1, very severe case. And pardon me, I'm going to sneeze. And developed long COVID, had major compromise of my, another sneeze, of my stamina. You know, I work on a farm.
Yeah.
So I've always been very active. Wouldn't say athletic, I just work. And so I took the product for three reasons. One was there was a whole lot of propaganda being pushed. And if you had long COVID, and they didn't really acknowledge that long COVID existed at the time, it was very early. But if you had those symptoms, then they would improve if you would take the vaccine. There's actually a paper just recently put up by the Canadian COVID Alliance emergency room that's on the bioarchive server. It's a preprint. It demonstrates that if you, particularly if you have Moderna and you had cough with your long COVID, then it's quite likely that if you took the Moderna product while you had long COVID, it would make your symptoms worse, not better. But we didn't know that. We didn't know much of anything. And so I had that. I spoke to Peter Cullis, who told me that these problems have been resolved, so I shouldn't worry about taking it. And I needed to travel to Europe to participate in conferences. This was my livelihood back then, back in the day. So for those three reasons, I took the product. Jab 1 didn't really have an effect on me. I felt a little bit of tingling and things. Jab 2, I developed hypertension with a systolic to 230 plus, spiking, tinnitus, restless leg syndrome, POTS syndrome, a number of other things I didn't even remember. But I got the kind of typical post-vaccination cluster that the CDC was denying even existed, but now with the new ACIP and the work we've been doing at the COVID working group, that's no longer tenable. So that's my history with this. I'm often bashed for not having the wisdom to not take the vaccine, but if I hadn't done that and had those adverse events, I probably wouldn't have been quite so strident about my objections about the vaccine products and their safety.
No, I understand that. So tell us about your cancellation, your deplatforming, and what, if any, the professional consequences were, because you were quite vocal.
So almost immediately, Wikipedia and the editor in Wikipedia that was responsible has been tied to MI5. Wikipedia changed my bio to be extremely negative. So that started the defamation cascade. I was labeled as crazy anti-vaxxer, unqualified, kind of systematic efforts to deny what I'd actually done, despite all these patents behind me with my name on them. There's like 8 or 10 now, just U.S. patents, not just domestic U.S. Many others internationally. So kind of rewriting or blacklisting, rewriting history, denial of my contributions, all kinds of derision, attack pieces from every major corporate media outlet, including in the UK.
Yeah.
And um, deplatforming 3 times, I think it was, on LinkedIn. The last one was permanent and is still in place. They won't, even though I was paying them and I had years of data on LinkedIn with pictures of me, presenting at the World Health Organization and participating. I was right at the tip of the spear in moving forward the Ebola vaccine and getting it sold to Merck. I mean, I have a long history of successes in this domain, uh, in vaccines in general, vaccine technology, biodefense, vaccine manufacturing. I was uh, clinical director of a $330 million cell-based influenza contract. So, long history as a legitimate vaccinologist. All of that was trashed. Uh, the and denied. The notoriously, this one woman from the New York Times, Davy Alba, who was, I hadn't realized at the time, she had been hired to be a disinformation reporter and was being funded by the US government, paying money to the New York Times. And I stupidly invited her out to the farm to meet myself and my wife, talk to us, show her the patents, show her the data. Um, she wouldn't look at any of that. She just wanted pictures of me as a podcaster and wrote a hit piece in the New York Times that's still cited. It was cited in the lawsuit that the American Academy of Pediatrics brought against CDC the other day. That I, proving, because the New York Times said so, that I was a liar and that I'd misrepresented my CV. I've had judges throw out expert witness testimony based on the New York Times hit piece. And so there's that. And I've kind of gotten used to it. It's just the way the media rolls. It's not fair. It's not proper. It's not right, and it just is. You have to suck it up, and you can cry in your beer and feel sorry for yourself and portray yourself as a victim. I refuse to do any of that. Uh,
Good man.
I strive to be a happy warrior, but I'm Scots Irish by background, and I'm not going to take it lying down. The key event that happened really in all of this, I'd done a couple of little podcasts talking about things like uh, immune enhancement of vaccines and why that was a potential problem with this vaccine. But then Brett Weinstein had me on with Steve Kirsch, and we talked about the data that Byron Bridle had obtained from the Japanese regulatory dossier, the Common Technical Document,
Yeah.
that showed what Pfizer actually knew and what ostensibly our FDA knew, and how corrupt all that was. And we talked about the adverse events and VAERS, and that the biodistribution was all over. So Peter Cullis was wrong, and the FDA knew it. And Pfizer used the least sensitive method for detecting where the protein was being produced in the animal models. We talked about that. And kind of, I thought that was a pretty big deal. Millions of people watched it. Uh, and Brett got deplatformed off of YouTube. But his sin was not talking about the vaccines. The sin was talking about ivermectin.
Yeah, that was a big thing at the time.
Yep. So that was why YouTube demonetized him. And then, and that was how he was making all his money, because he'd been kicked out of academia, basically because he didn't go along with woke.
Mm-hmm.
And and then, so that was a big deal. And um, then lightning struck as we were getting ready and preparing for the Stop the Mandates rally, Defeat the Mandates rally in DC on the Lincoln Memorial steps 4 years ago. Bobby spoke there, Bobby Kennedy. And as part of that, there was advocacy that I go on this podcast run by this character named Joe Rogan. And
Small
so,
guy, I think.
Yeah, and so that one went big. I've been talking about Matthias Desmet's mass formation hypothesis, essentially the crowd psychology and crazy of what was going on during COVID.
Hmm.
And it's the the basis for Matthias's subsequent book, uh, the psychological basis of totalitarianism, which is really a 21st century update of Hannah Arendt's work in the 20th century, a seminal thinker and philosopher who was um, subjected to Nazi Germany as a Jew, uh, and others. And Matthias was similarly attacked and rejected by his academic home. Uh, but so Joe asked me about mass formation psychosis, and I gave a cogent response, probably better than I'd be able to do if you asked me the same question now. And because I was hot on it, I was talking about it all the time to big audiences, hundreds of people, and that was big for me. And um, the people started searching on Google for the keywords mass formation psychosis, and Google and Steve Kirsch documented this. Google started manually manipulating the search results to direct people to not the podcast that I'd done or that Matthias had done, but to an obscure podcaster who was attacking us. Uh, um, and so we kind of broke the internet. That phrase has been overused, but I think it actually applies here.
I think it
And
does.
it went big. It was one of the, until more recently, Joe's had Trump on and Bobby on and a number of people that have just pegged the needle much more than I did. But that was a pretty big one. That was in the tens of millions, many tens of millions, I'm told. And then uh, because I've been deplatformed, it's strangely, uh, literally the day that, or the day before we recorded that, I was deplatformed from LinkedIn and X, then Twitter at the same time, literally within hours of each other. And before the podcast came out. So this led to the meeting that I don't always lose 40,000 followers, but when I do, I pick up 40 million from Joe Rogan in of one of these images where they took this character that sells beer. The most interesting man in the world is the campaign.
That's it. I've seen the
They
meme.
put my
Yeah.
face on that, and then put this meme, uh, and that kind of captured what happened. And Steve Kirsch had advised that I get onto Substack, and he was really excited. He said, Robert, I made $30,000 last month on Substack. You really got to get on." And so this was about 2 months before the Rogan hit. And so I was on Substack doing my thing, writing my essays, and Rogan happened, and then the subscriptions just went through the roof. So that turned out to, Joe doesn't pay anybody, but I was indirectly compensated. And then about a month and a half later, Alex Berenson attacked me on Laura Ingram's Fox News show. And Alex Berenson, the former New York Times journalist, I like to say you can take the journalist out of the New York Times, but you can't take the New York Times out of the journalist. So Alex attacked me for lying about being an inventor of mRNA technology and for endorsing ivermectin. And that caused another huge spike in my Substack subscriptions. So thank you very much, Alex. I appreciate that. I don't know if it was your intent, but it certainly was the consequence.
Definitely helps out, didn't it? So you mentioned that you were at the World Health Organization. Has your opinion of them changed during or
Oh,
because of
I've
COVID?
always known they were deeply corrupt.
Yeah.
When I was there on behalf of my client, New Link Genetics, which had the rights to the Canadian developed ZBOB vaccine, RVZV ZBOB, which is the vaccine that was eventually sold to Merck. But, but my client had purchased it from the Canadian government public health service for about $100,000. And then nobody would fund it because who needs a Ebola vaccine to protect small villages in Africa that occasionally have an outbreak of Ebola? There's no market for that until there was.
Hmm.
So I've been representing my client at the WHO in a number of high-level meetings. You of course know the infamous Khrushchev moment where he's pounding on the lectern with his shoes saying, "We'll bury you." Well, I had a moment like that in the WHO for the deputy director in her library, in which she was pounding on the table saying, "We have to take this vaccine away from the Americans." And I had to stand up to her and say, "No, I'm sorry. We own this vaccine. You can't use it." Because what she wanted to do, the problem was that the Médecins Sans Frontières workers were coming out of Western Africa, and they didn't want to go back. They didn't want to die of Ebola. That's for darn sure. And so she felt that she was going to have to jab them with this untested vaccine to get them to go back in country. And I basically had to be resisting that. And then, time went on. I got to see all kinds of shenanigans at the WHO. And then finally, long story short, there was a competition between GSK and my client. They wanted to do an adenovirus vectored Ebola vaccine and akin to your AstraZeneca product that was marketed in the UK. And my client's was a different technology. But I knew from the intelligence community in the United States, intercepted communications within GSK, that GSK couldn't manufacture it at scale. They couldn't produce enough of this stuff to make it useful in the outbreak. And I knew that my client in the test runs that DoD had funded, now Department of War, DOW, had enough vaccine product to basically vaccinate all of Africa. It was an incredibly high yield. And so I had to go to the mat against GSK also. And eventually we prevailed. And the WHO acknowledged that we had the leading vaccine candidate, and disagreed with GSK that believed that it was advancing that all public money should be going to their vaccine and not to any other candidates. So I beat that one back. But then I think her name was Margaret Chan. It was then Tedros's predecessor. She came to my client and said, "Well, now that you're the leading candidate, we really suggest that you make a large donation to the WHO to get whatever benefits would come from that." I mean, they're just pretty egregiously corrupt, and they don't apologize for it. They expect their kickbacks.
Yeah, it
So
seems.
what I saw during COVID was just more of the same. And no, I wasn't surprised by Tony Fauci. I've been dealing with Tony Fauci and watching him get away with stuff my entire professional career. Things that Tony Fauci gets away with or got away with would have caused me as an investigator to be blacklisted. But there's never any consequences for him.
There does seem to be. I mean, I don't know what you've seen online. I know we've seen a few things online over here about Fauci. I don't know much about the guy. I know that he was referenced in RFK's book, I believe.
Yeah, I twice edited that book, soup to nuts, front to back.
Oh, really? Okay. And someone raised the point once that if RFK's statements were detrimental in any way, there'd be a lawsuit there, and there's been no lawsuit brought. So
well, everything that's there is well documented, and Bobby is a lawyer.
So what is he like? Did he approach you to go work with him, or did you know each other from before?
So the origin of my relationship with the secretary goes back to the book. And someone alerted him that I had various information about things that go on inside the government, particularly in the biodefense space. And so I was sitting on the couch watching TV with my wife one day in the evening, and my cell phone lights up and it says Waterkeepers Alliance. And I'm like, what is Waterkeepers Alliance? So I swipe right and hello? Hello? Is this Robert Malone? This is
That's a
Bobby
crap.
Kennedy.
That's brilliant.
And like I point to my wife, get on the phone. I can't believe it.
That's hilarious.
Yes, sir. How can I help you? So he asked me a bunch of questions, and then one thing led to another, and he asked me to edit the book. We have a mutual friend that has become one of our best friends. He's a wealthy business person who actually bankrolled Bobby's candidacy initially. I was one of the first that he disclosed that he was going to run for president. Our mutual friend traveled here. He's got a private jet to the farm and with his family, and we discussed polling data, et cetera, et cetera. And then once, from time to time, the secretary would call me for whatever little thing was bugging him at the moment that he felt I might give him advice on. And then when he was confirmed, I had let the administration know that there was a couple of positions I would be interested in serving on. And then I got notified through the media that I'd been appointed to the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices. Bobby apparently announced that I was co-chair, but there isn't such a thing as co-chair. It's vice chair, and so that had to be walked back a little bit by the CDC. And he calls me from time to time. I don't bother him. I rarely even send him a text. Some people call him all the time. I don't. He's incredibly busy. To the extent that I interact, I go through Stephanie Spear, who's his deputy chief of staff and longtime right-hand person. And if he feels the need to get my opinion on something like he does from time to time, he just calls me and like, yes, sir, how can I help? And the position at the ACIP is the worst of both worlds. I'm a special government employee without pay, which was the status that Elon Musk had. And so I'm constrained in what I can say about things and what I can write about. So that's one of the sacrifices. There's certain dark blackout areas that I can't really talk about on my Substack or on podcasts.
Understood.
And I can't talk about insider information that I knew through the ACIP. And I have to generally mind my P's and Q's and not say anything nasty about President Trump. Because that does get tracked. So I'm very supportive of the administration and supportive of the secretary. It's, there's a saying in the Code of the West that you should ride for the brand. What that translates to is, you should support the operation that you're working for.
So the company line.
Yeah, and I don't compromise my integrity. I don't say untrue things, but I'm supportive of the president. I'm very supportive of the secretary. I'm supportive of the Make America Healthy Again movement. I serve as a advisor to Maha Action, as I mentioned, and that's just part of my current reality. Will that continue? It's many moving parts, but that's the current status, and I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for the opportunity to serve my country and to serve the secretary, and I'll do so to the best of my ability.
It just seems like it's almost like having these connections is amazing. They've started as a scientist and a vaccine technician, and now you know President Trump. It's to me that's a hell of a jump. It's an amazing jump, actually.
Well,
So
we write every single day. So people ask. I've had journalists that assume that I have some direct line of power, some joystick that I can control and get. I have various social media wonks attacking me because I haven't gotten rid of the mRNA vaccines yet, as if I had that power, right, to snap my fingers and tell the commissioner of the FDA what to do. It's absolutely absurd, and there's many in the media that think that I have more power than I do. The influence that I have in my wife working together with me comes through the Substack.
yeah,
Our Substack gets read by a number of influential people within the government, including in the National Security Council from time to time. And so, uh, as you might hope, if I come up with insights and observations that people within the government find useful, such as identifying corrupt behaviors or activities that they might want to take action on, then fantastic. And if they find that what I'm writing is just partisan conservative drabble and they don't want anything to do with it, that's their business too. But I strive to be a professional, and now I make my living basically as a scientist reporter and physician, and increasingly involved in public policy. I travel quite a bit to Europe. Just the other day, the delegation from the AUR party in Romania, so they're the majority minority party, sought me out when they came to DC. And I sat down with them and talked to them about MAHA and how things are going in Romania. I've been to Romania a number of times and supported the Make Europe Great Again movement, the Make Europe Healthy Again movement, traveled to Italy and Rome a stupid amount of times. I don't remember, it's like 8 or 10 or something in the last few years, trying to help the Italians. Last time I met with the senior senator from the Brothers of Italy party. In the UK setting, Andrew Bridgen, I consider a friend, and many others. So
he suffered for speaking out as well. Actually, how do you
oh yeah,
think? How do you think people like yourself and Andrew Bridgen will be remembered in the future?
I'm sure we'll be forgotten. It's okay. It's history is written by the victors. It
It's
all
true.
depends on how this plays out. There have been many voices, and I think one of the my experience has been that people in this social media influencer sphere, which is one of the roles that people attribute to me these days, uh, often uh, suffer from a certain amount of narcissism,
Hmm.
and that is for many people they're driven to seek attention, uh, and um, there are various kind of strategies that they use in self promotion, and um, many of them uh, lose their souls in chasing fame and fortune.
No, I
I've
can
seen it
understand.
so many times, and I think one of my superpowers is that my wife has been married to me for 47 years, and she doesn't hold back. So she's very smart. She writes about half of our Substack. She writes the funnies on Friday and Sunday, which people love. We would probably starve if it wasn't for that, and or certainly our horses would. And she keeps me on the straight and narrow. And also, I think I've had enough setbacks in my life that I'm acutely aware that uh, fame is fleeting. I mean, there was a time when I was on the circuit, traveling the world about the RNA and the DNA and vaccines and all of that. And I was highly sought after. And then I wasn't. And and I've been put down. I've had a lot of setbacks, uh, and I've just learned to reinvent myself and roll with it, and not get too caught up in um, in ego and self. And I think having the background of working in the land and being surrounded by just average rural people, you can't walk around as a flaming egotist and uh, um, meanwhile be going to the local grain store to get your bags of grain for your horses. You can't live and prosper that way. You have to uh, fit into a variety of different communities the way I live, and you can't do that if you are all caught up in your ego. So what's going to happen with me or Andrew? Obviously, I missed the chance at the brass ring of the Nobel Prize, and that is not going to come back. They don't give out two of those.
No, no.
So that's just the way that is. And, um, there's, I think that probably over time, if anything, I'll be a footnote. Andrew, uh, who's a great guy, knows he gave us a tour once of the House of Commons that was just awesome. Uh, we even got to go to the House of Lords, and don't tell anybody, but I actually took pictures of the chair, uh, and we stood in front of it. I think that's not allowed, but we
Your
did.
secret is safe with me.
But I may have to bypass Heathrow now for the foreseeable future, uh, or or your esteemed PM may throw me into the Huskow.
Well, there is
But
that.
there is that.
There is that. Careful what you tweet is all I can say. It
Yeah.
seems like that's happening a lot. But I'm really thankful for your time this evening. It's an evening here for us. It's been almost an hour, but I do have just one last question. Um, Younger people who are coming up through university, studying medicine and biochemistry and vaccines, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, I've talked about this. I can. Uh, here's. I have two sons. Uh, they
So
are
do I,
both.
and a daughter.
They're both senior computer engineers. Neither one went into academia or medicine or science. Uh, it's the system is really compromised right now. Especially, it's very abusive. The postdoctoral system is essentially prolonged indentured servitude. Uh, Academia is compromised by a number of forces. Uh, there's a surplus of biologists and biochemists and genetic engineers. Uh, it is there are so many more lucrative ways to go. Uh, the the future horizon for young people in the workforce is really challenging because of the growth of computational technology and artificial intelligence and robotics. And the future is envisioned. You can follow along the bouncing ball with what the World Economic Forum is projecting, but those folks kind of do rule the world, and and they are predicting a major downturn in the need for human labor, and that's just a fact. There is, I've published in our Substack where we write about this among other things. Uh, the transhumanism and AI and robotics and all this, and the megatrends associated with that. There's some interesting economic modeling that suggests that the value of human labor is going to be pushed down close to zero because it will be replaced largely by robotics and computation and artificial intelligence, just like the example being a surgeon.
Hmm.
Right now, a surgeon fetches a premium because of all the years of training necessary to master that skills. But in the future, and already increasingly, surgery is being done robotically, and increasingly it will be done robotically. And what that means is the value of a surgical procedure will be determined by the cost of the computational power and the robotics. And the modeling is that will basically drive human value, labor value, down to zero. And the thing that will dominate global growth economically will be available computing power. Now, the derivative of that is that the masters of the world, we can already see the rough outlines. The new masters of the world, the new oligarchs, will be the ones that control the computing power. But for the average folk and the young person moving up, frankly, the greatest job security is going to be in Mike Rowe here in the United States calls them dirty jobs. It's the manual labor tasks that cannot be readily replicated using robotics and artificial intelligence. It's hard to figure out how you're going to have a robot driven by AI that's going to crawl under your basement and fix that leaky pipe, or wire a new circuit into your electrical box, or fill in the blank.
Yeah, yeah,
There's
yeah.
a lot of in the United States, HVAC, heating, ventilation, air conditioning technicians make strong six-figure salaries, and they're in huge demand. They're a rate-limiting step. The trades are actually probably going to do better than at least that's all the projections, than the college-educated pathways. So the reason to go into biology or molecular biology or virology or medicine is because you really have a passion to do it and you love it and you want to help people and you want to make a difference. That's got to be genuine, because if you're doing it to make a buck, you're going to be sorely disappointed, because those are not cheap dates to get those degrees. I mean, I only finished paying off my medical school debt when I was about 50, 53 years old. That's what the young people now, they're facing even worse situations in the United States. I don't know about the UK, but this is not an easy pathway. And if you're doing it for economic reasons or for status reasons, think again. If you're doing it because you really care about people and you have a passion for doing these things, or you're passionate about trying to understand the nature of life and answer some of these fundamental questions, God bless you. But don't expect it to be an easy ride, and don't expect academia to be anything other than viciously competitive, petty, and corrupt.
Dr. Malone, thank you ever so much for your time this evening.
Thanks for having me on.
Not a problem, not a problem. You take care, sir.
Okay, you good.